hand here a report that each one of you has been emailed and was released last week publicly by the Grassroots Institute, commenting on the multi-year state budget presented by the governor. In short, we basically have found that the revenues projected over the next couple of years, even incorporating some of the Council of Revenue's informal comments, are perhaps higher than we really can expect. Secondly, expenditures have already proven to be higher. Given the State of the State address, there are items that are going to come forward that are not even included in the budget. So if we have lower revenues and higher expenditures, we're not in a position to go out and start a new industry, especially banking. In particular, our report points out that there are some concerns over the unfunded liabilities of the ERS and the EUTF. You already know that we're in a process of paying down an extraordinary unfunded liability debt to the tune of paying every year $1.3 billion every year for the next 30 years. That's a huge cash outlay. Wes Machida, who has not yet arrived, I hope he'll be here a little later on, you could ask him the comment he made last week when he affirmed the grassroots analysis that we are paying $1.3 billion per year for 30 years, and he said, that's not the whole of it. We could actually end up paying more. This isn't a good time fiscally for us to move forward and to risk the state's fiscal health, particularly because what we're targeting here is what was called toxic assets in the banking crisis, basically mortgages that really aren't being paid for. So that's the fiscal perspective. But I want to bring a second perspective as well. As legislators, I know you're deeply concerned about best practices. How are the other 49 states operating their legislature and their state government? That's where Grassroots Institute plays the role of being an independent think tank affiliated with the independent think tanks in all 50 states, both red states and blue states. So we ran this by to see what's going on. Multiple states have considered starting a state bank, but they've decided not to do so for the most part. California, for example, its legislative analyst office, which is nonpartisan, basically analyzed the initiative and considers that it's impossible to estimate any potential revenues from such a source. And so they couldn't consider any of the models that were put forth to them as to being sound in terms of revenue generation. A similar proposal went before Massachusetts and it was rejected. Its commission that covered this stated that it would cost $3.6 billion in startup funds and expose public funds to unacceptably high risk. As you know, as mentioned earlier, there is one state that in a sense has historically been grandfathered in terms of operating a state bank, and that's North Dakota. Some people say, look at the profitability of the North Dakota bank, but we have to be very careful to understand North Dakota is not Hawaii. We are radically different in terms of our capacity to launch such an endeavor. For example, North Dakota's bank is based upon a huge excess of cash. They didn't know what to do with their funds that came from the shale oil boom. We are not in that position in Hawaii, as all of you know. Secondly, they absolutely resisted the idea of getting into the mortgage business, particularly the subprime mortgage business, and so it's a totally different model. Other factors are different. North Dakota is ranked second in terms of economic performance, and I've documented this in our report. We're ranked 18, and in terms of prospects as to how our economy will go, North Dakota is ranked second, and we're ranked 37. That's based upon 15 factors of the American Legislative Exchange Council, and I'll just read one of them to you, and it's very relevant to whether we should start a bank, and that is the amount of debt service as a share of our tax revenue. How much are we paying right now of our tax revenues for debt service already? Well, North Dakota is paying very little, 2.7%. We're paying 300% more, 7.4%. And Wes Machida can let you know that a huge portion, about a third of our state budget is devoted to fixed costs. Given that situation, it's extremely risky to start a state business like this one. The third perspective, and I'll close with this, we need to consider some free market issues here. Is it good for the state to become the competitor of local banks? Consider what people think about Hawaii as an investment climate, given the shuttering of the TMT or the super ferry and so forth. To send out a signal to Wall Street or even to the rest of the world that Hawaii now, in addition to having centralized institutions in many areas that shut down ventures, is going to start a state bank. I don't think that's going to be good for the profile of leadership that we need to produce, and I look to you as our legislators for that leadership, and I thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you. We'll ask questions at the end.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much,
Appreciate
sir.
it.
We
Aloha.
appreciate it.